Lily Tomlin and Jane Wagner. Just both of you talk to me about just the title, Free Women.
For 50 years Lily Tomlin played by her own rules and powerful people hated her for it. She sued NBC to get out of her laugh-in contract when they tried to control her. She openly mocked corporations while other stars stayed silent for paychecks. She lived with Jane Wagner in secret because coming out meant career suicide. Now at 85, she's revealing the death threats, the blacklisting, the times producers tried to destroy her. What she's telling us isn't about comedy, it's about a war nobody knew she was fighting. Lily Tomlin was born on September 1, 1939 in Detroit, Michigan. Her parents had come up from Paducah, Kentucky during the Great Depression hoping for a better life. Her father Guy got a factory job, her mother Lily Mae worked as a nurse's aide. They lived in a modest home on Louise Avenue in Highland Park. It was a tough neighborhood filled with factory workers and working-class families. Lily grew up in a world shaped by hard work, struggle, and survival. Her parents were Southern Baptists, and she went to church regularly, though her views would later shift. Her younger brother Richard eventually joined the family, completing their small household in the heart of Motor City. Detroit in the 1940s and early 1950s was a place full of energy and change. The war had ended and people from all over the country had come to the city for work. That meant different accents, stories, and styles filled the streets. Lily was only 6 when she started putting on shows in her backyard. She wrote skits, made costumes, and roped her brother Richard into performing. These weren't just childish games, she was studying people, watching the way neighbors walked, talked, and reacted. From gossiping old women to tired factory workers, they all became characters in her imagination. Even the way Detroiters spoke, with their unique mix of Midwest and Southern tones, gave her a deep understanding of voice, rhythm, and personality. Those backyard shows were her first stage. In 1953, Lily was accepted into Cass Technical High School. Getting in wasn't easy, you had to test well and have strong grades. Cass wasn't just another school, it was a huge, beautiful building with special labs, workshops, and even a concert hall. It had over 3,600 students, but Lily stood out. She was sharp and curious. At Cass, students had to choose specific areas of study, almost like college majors. That gave her a taste of structure and focus. She hadn't yet thought about acting as a career, but the discipline she picked up there would serve her for the rest of her life. She graduated in 1957, the same school that would later produce stars like Diana Ross and Jack White. Even as a child, Lily's performances were different. She didn't just mimic, she became the people she saw, the postman, the woman at the corner shop, the loud neighbor upstairs. Her comedy was rooted in truth. Richard, her brother, became her sidekick, often unwillingly. Their backyard shows started drawing more kids. What began as fun turned into practice, a place where she could build characters, test voices, and learn timing. She wasn't just funny, she was precise. She watched every detail and turned everyday moments into something magical. After high school, Detroit was booming. Factories were hiring. Most of her classmates stayed, but Lily had other plans. She enrolled at Wayne State University and started studying biology. Her goal was to become a doctor, something stable and respected. It was what you did if you came from a working-class family. But something changed during her second year. On a whim, she auditioned for a school play. The rush, the freedom, the connection, everything about it felt right. She switched her major to theater. It wasn't the safe choice, but it was the honest one. That decision marked the beginning of her real journey. Between 1959 and 1965, Lily worked small gigs around Detroit. She performed in coffee houses and nightclubs, sometimes 5 shows a night, making only $15 to $25 each time. But she wasn't chasing fast laughs. While other comedians told quick jokes, Lily told stories. Her comedy was slow, careful, and layered. She played characters, a teenager screaming at her parents, a nosy neighbor, a stressed-out telephone operator. These roles were based on real people she grew up around. Her act wasn't just funny, it was human. Still, it wasn't what club owners expected. Audiences weren't used to this kind of humor. But Lily kept going. By 1965, she'd hit a ceiling. Detroit couldn't take her any further. With less than $200 to her name, she moved to New York City. She settled in the East Village, renting a tiny fifth-floor apartment for $60 a month. She took a waitressing job at Howard Johnson's to get by. Money was tight. Some days she survived on a coffee and bagel. Subway fare was a luxury, so she walked. Everywhere she used every free moment to audition. Most of the time the answer was no. Between 1965 and 1966 she performed wherever she could: Café Au Go Go, the Improv, small smoky clubs where she sometimes played to 10 people. But even in those early sets, the characters were forming: Ernestine the snarky telephone operator, Edith and the wisecracking 5-year-old. Her style was strange to club owners. They told her to be more normal, tell relationship jokes, dress sexier, smile more. One agent told her to talk about finding a husband if she wanted work. But Lily didn't bend. She kept performing her way, even if it meant earning 40% less than other women comics. Industry expectations were harsh. Most female comedians in the 1960s were expected to joke about dating, weight, or being unlucky in love. But Lily wasn't interested in that. She didn't want to be just another pretty girl telling jokes. She wanted to become her characters. Sometimes they were men, sometimes they were children, always they were real. That scared the industry. They didn't know where to place her. But in 1966 things started to change. She landed a spot on the Gary Moore Show. For the first time, TV gave her space to shine. What stood out was her raw talent, the way she could slip into a character so real it felt like someone you'd known your whole life. She wasn't just telling jokes, she was becoming people. And people in the industry noticed. Soon after, she landed a spot on the Gary Moore Show for the 1966-67 season. It wasn't a long-running hit, but for Lily, it was life-changing. She was finally getting paid to do what she loved. Her bits weren't just funny, they were different. One time, instead of wearing tap shoes, she stuck taps to the bottom of her bare feet and danced. That oddball moment said everything about her style: unpredictable, inventive, and impossible to ignore. Working alongside Gary Moore, a TV legend in his own right, gave her credibility. It also showed producers she was more than a stand-up comic, she was a true performer with range. Between gigs, she stayed sharp by doing stand-up in New York's comedy clubs. Places like Café Au Go Go and the Improvisation became her creative lab. She'd take the subway from the Lower East Side, rent a $10 limo just to make a grand entrance, and walk into clubs dressed in thrift shop glamour with a fake white fur. It wasn't about being rich, it was about commanding attention. She even worked at Howard Johnson's during the day, announcing herself over the intercom as Waitress of the Week, turning everyday moments into comedy. That was Lily, always performing, always watching, always building her next character. But as she climbed the ladder, she started saying no. She turned down roles that would have paid well but boxed her into tired female stereotypes. She refused to play the dumb blonde, the nagging wife, or the sexy sidekick. She had grown up watching comedians like Gene Carroll, who told jokes with a sharp edge and didn't pander to anyone. Lily wanted the same for herself. She wasn't just doing comedy, she was making a statement. She wanted to play characters that mattered, characters who said something real. In 1969, her career nearly took a wrong turn. She auditioned for 2 shows at the same time, Music Scene and Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. She picked Music Scene, thinking it was the smarter bet, but the show bombed. So she circled back to Laugh-In, which was already a massive hit by then. She joined in December of that year, unsure if she'd stand out, but her audition had impressed producer George Schlatter. She didn't tell one-liners like the others, she performed characters, real people. That's what got her in. And then came Ernestine. Nobody expected a cranky telephone operator to take over the show. But once Lily gave Ernestine her snort, her pinched face, and her cutting sarcasm, audiences went wild. One ringy dingy, two ringy dingy, became part of the culture overnight. She wasn't just mocking the phone company, she was dragging it. Will you be home between April and November? She'd ask with a smirk, poking fun at how powerless people were against the monopoly. The snort wasn't planned. Lily said she just clenched her body so hard during the act that it happened naturally. Suddenly people couldn't go grocery shopping without begging her to do the voice. Then came Edith, and 5.5 years old, sitting in an oversized rocking chair, delivering life lessons with a raspberry at the end. And that's the truth. Kids copied it. Parents loved it. But Edith wasn't just a kid. She had a full backstory, a troubled home, a dog named Buster, a crush on a boy named Junior. She was funny, but she also said things adults were too afraid to admit. That's what made her stick. In the 90s, Tomlin even brought her back for animated specials and a book co-written with her longtime partner Jane Wagner. While the characters made her famous, things weren't smooth behind the scenes. Laugh-In was a mess, writers scrambled to finish scripts, costumes changed by the minute, and Lily fought hard to protect her characters from being watered down. After 1972, when George Schlatter left, the show lost its edge. Producers wanted safer jokes. Lily pushed back. By 1973, things had gotten so bad that she was suing NBC to get out of her contract. To her, Ernestine and Edith weren't just jokes, they were real. "Do you think my characters aren't real?" she once said. "They're out there somewhere, I just imitate them." The industry respected her, but they didn't always know what to do with her. In 1970, AT&T offered her $500,000, a fortune back then, to have Ernestine star in their ads. That's over $3.7 million today. She refused. Not Lily, Ernestine refused. The character wouldn't be caught dead working for the company she mocked. That's how seriously Lily took it. Years later, she brought Ernestine back on Saturday Night Live for a fake ad. "We don't care. We don't have to. We're the phone company." She could have cashed in. Instead, she doubled down on the satire. In March 1971, Lily Tomlin did something no one expected. She released a comedy album called This Is a Recording, and it changed everything. It was just her performing as Ernestine, the snarky telephone operator, with that unforgettable snort and the line, "One ringy dingy." She recorded it live at the Ice House in Pasadena. People couldn't get enough. The album climbed to number 15 on the Billboard Hot 200. No solo female comedian had ever gotten that far, and no one else would for over 40 years. That album wasn't just funny, it was smart, sharp, and fearless. Ernestine called people like Joan Crawford, J. Edgar Hoover, and Gore Vidal, whom she mispronounced as Mr. Vele, and roasted them all. A year later, Tomlin won the Grammy for Best Comedy Recording. She became the first woman to win that award alone. Before her, only Elaine May had won, and that was with Mike Nichols. In 2024, the Library of Congress made it official. The album was preserved in the National Recording Registry for being culturally and historically significant. Just 2 years after that, in March 1973, she brought her wild characters to television with her first solo special, Lily. It aired on CBS and wasn't like other shows at the time, no big musical numbers, just raw, character-driven comedy. She played Ernestine again, this time calling General Motors. She brought in Edith and the 5-year-old troublemaker. And she introduced Bobby Janine, a lounge organist full of bad advice and fake charm. Richard Pryor showed up too. In one sketch, he and Tomlin's tasteful lady got stuck in an elevator. It was awkward, strange, and brilliant. The special was a hit. Tomlin won 2 Emmy Awards in 1974, one for writing and one for the show itself. CBS rushed out another special that same year with Alan Alda, and that one won another Emmy. She followed up with more specials on ABC, proving she wasn't just funny, she was unstoppable. Then came Nashville in 1975. Tomlin jumped from TV to film. It was a huge risk. She had never acted in a movie before. But director Robert Altman took a chance on her. She played Linnea Reese, a gospel singer and mother of 2 deaf children. Her character had a quiet affair with a country singer. It was subtle, deep, real. Altman's style was wild. 24 main characters, overlapping scenes, live music, no traditional plot. But Tomlin fit right in. She pulled from her years of building characters on stage and television. When Nashville hit theaters that summer, critics were blown away. The film became a classic and was later preserved in the National Film Registry. It was Altman's masterpiece and Tomlin's breakout. Her performance in Nashville didn't just impress critics, it earned her an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress in 1976. That's rare for someone with no film experience. She also won over the National Society of Film Critics and the New York Film Critics Circle. BAFTA nominated her as Most Promising Newcomer. The Golden Globes gave her 2 nominations, Best Supporting Actress and New Star of the Year. Meanwhile, Nashville was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. One of those Oscars went to I'm Easy, the song Keith Carradine sings while seducing Tomlin's character. Her success wasn't a fluke, it was the start of a serious acting career. In 1977, she took another leap with The Late Show. This time, she played Margot, a character completely different from Linnea. Margot was quirky, funny, and layered. The film was part noir, part comedy, and her performance was sharp and grounded. She won the Silver Bear for Best Actress at the Berlin Film Festival, gaining international respect. BAFTA upgraded her from newcomer to Best Actress in a leading role. She earned another Golden Globe nomination, her 3rd in just 2 years. That same year, she had gone from being a TV sketch comic to a respected film star. Later she would star in 9 to 5, All of Me, and decades later, the indie hit Grandma, which got her yet another Golden Globe nod at age 76. But behind all the performances, something personal had quietly changed everything. Back in March 1971, the same month she released This Is a Recording, she watched a TV film called J.T., written by Jane Wagner. The story stuck with her, it won a Peabody Award. Tomlin was so impressed that she had a mutual friend introduce them. The moment Jane walked into her hotel room, Lily was stunned. In 2 minutes I fell in love with her, Tomlin said years later. Jane wore hot pants, knee-high boots, and a little backpack. Lily had to leave for work in Chicago, but the connection was instant. She came back to New York for their first date. Jane had studied art and design, toured in theater, and worked for companies like Kimberly-Clark before becoming a writer. They shared a creative spark and a view of the world. Lily said, "She can verbalize it, and I can physicalize it." That bond became the foundation of a creative partnership that lasted over 50 years. Soon after, they started working together on Tomlin's second comedy album, And That's the Truth. It came out in 1972 and was once again recorded at the Ice House. This time, Tomlin played Edith and, age 5.5. Edith told stories about her neighbor, her school, her toes, everything. Jane helped write it. So did other contributors like Jim A.L., Chad Dowling, and Betty Baird. The album earned another Grammy nomination and climbed to number 41 on the Billboard charts. It was the 3rd highest-ranking comedy album by a woman at that point. Each side of the record held 20 minutes of pure Edith and chaos. It was both silly and smart, and it cemented their working relationship. By 1975, Tomlin had become a star. That same year, Time magazine offered her the cover, but there was a catch. They told her, "Come out as lesbian and you'll get it." Tomlin said, "No," she told her publicist. "I'm not going to play their game." In 1975, being out could destroy a career. Tomlin and Wagner lived together but kept it private. She didn't want the headlines to be about her sexuality. "I wanted to be acknowledged for my performance," she later said. She worried about how her Southern religious mother would take it, in her words. She would have died. Tomlin did end up on Time's cover 2 years later in 1977, but they didn't mention her personal life. Between 1977 and 1984, Tomlin and Wagner took their art to another level. They started blending philosophy, satire, and social commentary into comedy. After working on Appearing Nightly, they built towards something bigger. In 1985, they premiered The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe. Wagner wrote it. Tomlin performed it. She played a dozen characters, each one raw and emotional. The show was called Samuel Beckett Crossed with Thornton Wilder. Critics loved it. It won awards. It wasn't just a show, it was a reflection of who they were and how they saw the world. Their work through this era also won them more Emmys. Tomlin once said, "Jane's writing was satirically but tenderly mixing farce and slapstick with deep meaning. Together, they proved that comedy could be powerful. It could say something real." In 1980, Lily Tomlin lit up the screen in 9 to 5, playing Violet Newstead, a widowed mother of 4 who'd spent 12 years training her male boss only to be denied promotions because of blatant sexism. The film, starring Jane Fonda and Dolly Parton, wasn't just funny, it was a full-blown cultural moment. Audiences loved the fantasy of overthrowing a tyrant at work. It became one of the highest-grossing films of the year and turned Tomlin into a star who could mix sharp comedy with serious issues. Just 3 years earlier, she had won a special Tony Award and appeared on the cover of Time magazine. Now, she was a household name. 1 year later, she starred in The Incredible Shrinking Woman. This time, she didn't just carry the film, she played 3 different characters, written by her partner Jane Wagner. The movie made fun of consumer culture and the hidden dangers in everyday products. Tomlin played Pat Kramer, a suburban woman who starts shrinking after using a mix of chemicals found in her own house. One of the most memorable scenes shows a can of air freshener exploding in her car, foreshadowing the chaos ahead. It wasn't as big as 9 to 5, but it showed that Tomlin was fearless in her choices, willing to lead a sci-fi comedy even when the odds were uncertain. By 1984 she was back with All of Me, a wildly inventive comedy with Steve Martin. Critics loved it, audiences did too. Tomlin played Edwina Cutwater, a dying eyes whose soul accidentally ends up in Martin's body. The chemistry between them was electric. Martin's physical comedy and Tomlin's sharp timing made it a classic. Even when she wasn't on screen, you could feel her presence in every move Martin made. It was smart, fast, and ridiculous in the best way, exactly what screwball comedy was meant to be. Then came 1985 and Tomlin took things to a whole new level. She returned to Broadway with The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe, another Jane Wagner creation. In a single 117-minute performance, Tomlin played 12 characters, just her in black pants and a white blouse, switching roles without missing a beat. There was a rebellious teenager, a heartbroken rich woman, and even a trio of former feminists whose stories slowly connected. At the center was Trudy, a bag lady speaking to aliens about the human race. It was funny, strange, and deeply human. Critics were floored. The show ran for 391 performances. The next year she won the Tony for Best Actress, but this wasn't just another award. It was recognition for changing what solo performance could be. The New York Times called the play the most genuinely subversive comedy on Broadway. She wasn't just acting, she was challenging the system, giving voice to overlooked people, and blending comedy with commentary in a way that few had ever done. In 1993, Tomlin's activism came into focus when she stepped into HBO's And the Band Played On, a film about the AIDS crisis. She had just days to prepare after Whoopi Goldberg fell ill. Tomlin played Dr. Selma Dritz, a real-life health official from San Francisco. Surrounded by stars like Richard Gere and Ian McKellen, Tomlin stood out. She brought quiet urgency to the screen. She later spoke about how the competitiveness among scientists during the AIDS epidemic deeply shocked her. "People were willing to sacrifice anything for that ego," she said. That same year, she joined director Robert Altman for Short Cuts. The film ran over 3 hours and had 22 main characters. Tomlin played Doreen Pigott, a tired waitress married to a drunk limo driver played by Tom Waits. In one unforgettable scene, her car hits a young boy, setting off a chain of events across the film's sprawling storylines. Altman gave his actors room to explore, and Tomlin loved it. She once described him as Hemingway and Hunter Thompson rolled into one. The film didn't make much money, $6.1 million on a $12 million budget, but it became a critical darling. More than a decade later, in 2004, Tomlin returned in I Heart Huckabees. She played Vivian Jaffe, an existential detective helping clients make sense of their lives. Alongside Dustin Hoffman, she investigated the idea of universal interconnectivity. It was wild, philosophical, and deeply weird. Not everyone liked it. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 63% score, but it developed a cult following, especially among college students. Tomlin held her own in scenes that swung between chaotic comedy and deep philosophical musings. In 2006, she reunited with Altman one final time for A Prairie Home Companion. The film was based on Garrison Keillor's radio show and followed a fictional final broadcast before corporate bosses shut it down. Tomlin played Rhonda Johnson, half of a singing sister act with Meryl Streep. They played off each other like old pros. It was funny, warm, and melancholy. The film earned $26 million on a $10 million budget. Altman died just months after it came out. It was a goodbye wrapped in music and laughter. On December 31, 2013, Lily Tomlin married Jane Wagner, her partner of 42 years. They kept it quiet, no press, just a private ceremony in Los Angeles. They even picked up their license in Van Nuys to avoid being seen. They'd first met in 1971 when Wagner wrote This Is a Recording, Tomlin's Grammy-winning comedy album. Over the decades, they collaborated on films and plays, building something rare in Hollywood, an enduring creative and personal partnership. When asked the secret, Tomlin said it was admiration and respect. A year later, in 2014, she made history again. Tomlin became the first openly lesbian performer to receive the Kennedy Center honor. She was celebrated alongside Tom Hanks, Al Green, and Sting. Before the ceremony, President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama welcomed her to the White House. It was more than a career milestone, it was recognition of a life lived with courage and authenticity. Then came Grace and Frankie, premiering in 2015 on Netflix. It paired Tomlin once again with Jane Fonda. The show followed two women in their 70s who discover their husbands are in love with each other. It ran for 7 seasons. Tomlin played Frankie, a bohemian artist who embraced chaos, while Fonda played Grace, a polished perfectionist. The series tackled aging, dating, sex after 70, and friendship. Tomlin earned 4 Emmy nominations. Critics praised how it opened up conversations rarely seen on screen. Even after the show ended, Tomlin and Fonda kept working together, appearing in 80 for Brady and moving on in 2023. In 2015, Tomlin starred in Grandma, a low-budget indie film that became a surprise hit. Shot in just 19 days on a $600,000 budget, it made $7.2 million at the box office. She played Elle Reed, a no-nonsense lesbian poet helping her granddaughter get money for an abortion. The role earned her a Golden Globe nomination. It was sharp, emotional, and deeply honest. Critics called it one of her best performances. For many, it proved that Tomlin still had more to say, and could say it better than almost